was nice. So the story with the music is, I think it was Wednesday, we realized that we need to be in charge of music because Betty wasn't going to be here. So we came up with some different things, and Amy said, oh, I have someone. So maybe she can do it. So that's how we have Diana here today. We're so grateful to have some very nice. Yeah. And so I want to thank Greg, too, for helping coordinate everything today. And you know, it's always, every time we get to do it without our fearless leaders, we, you know, it's one more time to practice, you know, running things smoothly and that type of thing. So today's topic is on validation. And I thought that the daily word went quite well with validation. I rely on the strength of the Holy Spirit for validation. I threw that in. So sometimes things just kind of fall together, don't they? So I have one more scripture that leads into the talk. When we consistently suppress and distrust our intuitive knowingness, looking instead for authority, validation, and approval from others, we give our personal power away. Shakti going. So if that's the case, where do we seek validation? Where does it come from? You know, we're always hearing, that's one of those buzzwords that's been around for quite some time. You know, validate each other, seek my own validation for myself, validate your feelings, you know, this big movement, right? So what does that really mean? You know, we don't want to lessen the effect of validating each other, but then there's that thing where you really can't only do it for what other people say. You know, it's like, where am I coming at from inside? Because basically we have that instinct to be verified, to be strengthened, and to support each other. Not out of anything bad, but we just want to feel good about what we're doing. We like to have little markers that say, yeah, you're on the right path. You know, what's going on? But you don't want to depend on that over your own inner voice. Because we all have that peace inside of us, that inner knowing of God, you know, the Holy Spirit, the, you know, validation from the Spirit, from the still small voice. It's that little piece that comes in and you go, oh yeah, there it is. But you know, where does that come from? Well, it comes from everywhere. It comes from other people. It comes from going to a talk on Sunday. You know, for me, the song I Can See Clearly Now, that's a huge validating song for me. You know, there's been times in my life where that song has just been so appropriate for me, for what I'm going through. And so whenever I hear it, it brings me light and a good energy, because I go, that's right. There's been times that have been really dark, and then the sun came out. You know, and it's happened over and over. And that song reminds me of that. Reminds me and gives me validation that whatever I'm going through, that, you know, the sun's going to come out again. So we often, you know, get our validation through others' words, through talks, through music. But it's not necessarily just the words they're saying. It's that feeling that we get inside, that little piece that connects. And we say, oh, yeah, there it is. And it's usually when you're not trying to look for it, or when somebody else isn't really trying to validate you. It just all of a sudden happens. And you have that aha moment, you go, oh, there's that piece. There it is. So it's a very interesting process how it works. So how can we do this? How can we have our lives so that we are being validated, so that we're receiving that support and nurturing from others? Well, one thing is to keep people around you that are on the same page. You know, we come here every Sunday. We're all basically on the same page. We all want to have love. We want to find peace. We want to support each other. We want to be supported. So if you're in that kind of environment, that kind of validation is going to show up for you. You know, you can come to, sometimes you come to church and you're like, oh, I really need it today. Just being around the energy of like-minded people helps. It lifts us up. You know, just walking in the door. You know, or when we're doing our congregational meet and greet, or what do we call that?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're hugging each other. Isn't that just nice to get a hug? Just some days it's really nice, and some days it's even nicer to give a hug and to know that that's support for each other. You know, I'm in the right place right now. This is the right place for me. We go to classes during the week. Maybe we have our favorite books we read. You know, we open a book and you have books by your bedside, or you're reading one specific book. That offers validation for us. You know, how many times have you been reading something and you're just reading along, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, I've read this book 10 times. I never saw that. You know, and that's the peace. You know, that's the peace that we need, and it shows up because we seek it. We all do. You know, and it will show up for us. So being around like-minded people, having these activities around us, this creates a space for us that will strengthen us and support and encourage each other. Also, it's a good example to see, you know, what are you trying? We often hear, oh, I read this book, or, you know, I've tried this method. And you have to try different things to find out where your path is. You know, how do you know where your path is? I'm not sure how you know, but I know it's been kind of trial and error. You know, I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried all kinds of things. And some things have been really good in that space when that's what was going on. You know, as part of a very structured religion for some time, as probably my late 20s and early 30s. And for me, that worked at that time. And that's what I needed. But then it came time that it was time to change, and that was very difficult because I couldn't go to anybody for validation on that. It was an inside job at that point because I knew that what the Spirit was telling me was completely different than what the doctrine that I was participating in and the dogma was telling me. You know, they were saying you have to do this and you have to stay and you have to do it this way and that way. And I'm like, it's not working anymore. There's something wrong here. You know, and how do I get through that? You know, I couldn't go to my church leaders, you know, and say, I think I'm supposed to leave the church. You know, because here's the scenario. What happened was I met Greg. You know, and so I'm part of this very structured religion. This is you will marry it was the LDS church, so very structured. So, you know, you'll marry a man that's part of the religion, you'll go to the temple, you'll do this, and then, you know, God brought me this heathen man. And I knew inside that he was the one, but I couldn't reconcile all of that. You know, because I needed some validation. I needed to know for sure, for myself, this was going to be the right choice. And it took me some time, you know, and I had to go to books, and I went to prayer, and I went to, you know, I really didn't talk with anybody about it because I didn't feel like the advice I would get would be unbiased. Yes, you said that. Thank you. You know, so, but I sought that myself. And you know what happens is I received it, and it didn't come right away, and it came with a lot of, you know, back and forth, but it happened. And, you know, that's just all we can, each one of us has that peace inside of us to answer our own questions. But, you know, that doesn't mean we isolate. It doesn't mean we don't reach out for things, because we don't know where it's going to show up. You know, I've talked with people that, you know, I've tried to be all spiritual and, oh, I'm so, you know, let me help you, let me say this or that. And nothing ever comes of that very often. It's usually when you're just talking with someone, they go, that one time you said this, and I'm like, I did? You know, and I had no idea, and that's what spoke to them, because I got out of my own way. You know, and that's happened to me a lot with other people, and we'll just be talking, and something just really hits you, and it's like, oh, I get it, you know? And they're like, what? What did I say? What was so good? And, you know, we usually don't know because we're just being genuine. You know, and if we're just being genuine, it all works really well. So one of the, like, what I'm talking about is we have pieces for each other. You know, we meet people in different times of our lives that help support us and validate us. I've had a lot of experiences where people have come into my life for a season. You know, for a season and a reason, right? And those people aren't necessarily in my life anymore. And it's not because they weren't wonderful. it's just that that season passed, you know, and I honor those experiences because everything I've needed has always showed up. You know, even when especially when I'm like really dark and in doubt. You know, then just before there's that quote, it's wonderful. Just before the caterpillar thought that it was the end of the world, you know, it turned into a butterfly. And it's kind of like that. Well, life happens for me like that sometimes. Things, just when you think it's darkest, you know, something comes up and says, no, we got you. Here we go. And you know, you become a butterfly, right? Yeah. So how do we find those things? How do we make sure that we don't try the wrong thing, or that we don't go down the wrong road? There's no way. You have to go down the wrong road sometimes. I was listening to Robert's talk from like 3 weeks ago, and he brought up a principle called neti, which is not this, not that. And that's the best way to find something. Oh, that's not it. Well, that's not it. Okay, this could be it. Let me come back to it. Oh, that's definitely not it. You know, but how do you know unless you try? How do you know unless you read that book, or try that path, or talk to that person, or join that group? You know, and you might think, oh, this is a great idea. I've wanted to join this group for the longest time. And you show up and you're like, that's not it, you know? And that's okay, then you know. You know that's not it, you can stop putting any energy there, and then your energy can be given to the things that, to the next thing that comes along. I have another quote here. This one's from Eckhart Tolle, from his book Stillness Speaks, and it's about signposts, you know, those little signposts that we see. It says, the essence of this book, he's talking about his Stillness Speaks book, which is not, the essence of this book, which is not in the words, but within yourself. The words are no more than signposts. That to which they point is not to be found within the realm of thought, but a dimension within yourself that is deeper and infinitely vaster than thought. You know, so don't hang on to words, but they're signposts. They point us in the right direction. So that's all that stuff's real nice and good, and yay, look to yourself, and okay, but I often, after hearing a talk, wonder, you know, how do I do that? How do I do that tomorrow? You know, okay, this energy from this talk's going to probably last me through most of today, and I'm good, and it's a good day, and I had a good talk, but then tomorrow morning, what? You know, what do I do? How do I incorporate that in my life? So I found online on tinybuddha.com, written by Lori Deschain. Yeah, and maybe that's where I got it. It said Buddha. I'm going to have to go look that up. I apologize. But she had created a list of 5 ways to validate yourself. You know, and all it is practice, right? Something new to practice. So 1, make a use section in your daily gratitude journal. So if you do a gratitude journal, or if you just every once in a while think of things you're grateful for, you know, I'm grateful I have this wonderful space to come to. I'm grateful that I have food and water and shelter, and I have wonderful people. Well, include yourself on that list. I'm grateful that I am doing this. I'm grateful that I am learning this. I'm grateful for myself because I, you know, was of service and helped somebody. You know, put yourself on that list and see how it feels after you get past the awkwardness of, you know, feeling good about ourselves. Because a lot of us weren't taught that. It's not our culture necessarily, and a lot of our families, that's not necessarily how we were brought up. So it's new sometimes to put yourself on a gratitude list. Or try this one. Write down things you like about yourself. You know, I like this about me. And do it with confidence. You know, and at first it might be, oh, I kind of like this, but is anybody looking? I'll write this one down. And just practice it. Practice praising yourself, you know, and validating yourself. Number 2, before seeking external validation, ask yourself, what do I hope that that person tells me? Okay, do you ever talking to someone or ask them a question and you want a certain answer. You know, my example I came up was, say you're getting dressed in the morning and all that's great. Well, how does this look? Well, it doesn't matter what he says. He could say it looks great, and I'd be like, no, are you sure? Because blah, blah, blah. And then he'd say, no, it doesn't look good. And I'd be like, really, you don't think so? Because I think it does. You know, it's a no-win, right? Yeah. So I could say to myself, well, what do I want him to say? You know, and if the truth is, I might really want him to say, no, that doesn't quite look good together. So if that's what I want him to say, then that's what the truth is, right? So, you know, take that in any kind of situation, not just, you know, your clothes. But tell it to yourself. Tell yourself, what do I want them to say to me? And then say it to yourself and see if it's really the truth. Number 3, recognize when you are judging your feelings. This one really hit me. I was like, oh, emotional reactions to emotions. So that's just like, it's just building on itself. So you have a situation, you had a reaction, and then there's all this time spent on judging the reaction. Oh, I shouldn't have felt that way. I shouldn't have acted that way. I shouldn't be feeling this way. Well, you are feeling that way, and it's okay. You know, validate that. That way you can get rid of that piece of the judging and on having the emotions about the emotions, and you can maybe get to the issue. Here's a quote from the site. Once you've accepted your feelings, you'll then be free to seek support for the actual problem, not your self-judgment. And as I read that, I thought, wow, I do seek support a lot for my self-judgment. I've got to get that out of the way. And then I can deal with the actual problem. This one really, really hit home for me. Judging my own feelings. And so just recognize it. It's like anything else. Don't judge that you're judging yourself with your feelings, right? Because then you're just really stuck. It's just one of those loops over here, and you're just stop and say, hey, oh, that's what's happening. Okay. You know, and that's fine. Awareness is the beginning step of so many things. Just having awareness. Oh, that's what's happening. Okay. You know, and see what comes up next. Number 4, see yourself as the parent to the child version of you. So this one's really good. So meet your unmet needs from childhood. And this is very powerful to do. Because a lot of us are, you know, adults flopping around trying to figure this out. And we have stuff. We've all got stuff. And maybe we've done some work, maybe we haven't. But a very powerful tool is to be that parent to that little child that you didn't have, or that you did have, or that they did the best they could, or, you know, without judgment, right? But meet those needs. I actually did some really profound therapy on this. It was very, very helpful to me, where we went through different ages, and there were specific needs that would need to be met at each age range. And I went back through meditation and visualization and talked to that child and met those needs. And I hugged that child. And I felt it. I hugged that little girl who was just scared and hurt and crying and couldn't say what was wrong or didn't know what was wrong. And, the parent doesn't know what's wrong. But I went in and I intervened in the old cycle and put in a new path that was healing, that was validating, that supported, and that transcended that pain into blossoming and healing. And so doing that, and it can be very simple. You can just say, oh wow, look, I'm acting like a little kid right now. Maybe sometimes in our relationships we might have done that once or twice, right? Or we're acting a little whiny or something. Well, go back and sit for a minute at the end of your day or whenever you do your stuff, and just go back and say, oh, maybe as a child there was a time I needed some validation and support there. And go back and do it now. Because there's no There's no time when it comes to our emotions. It's all now. It's all right now. So it works. It works to go back and do that feeling. Number 5, get in the habit of asking yourself, what do I need right now? What does my body need? What does my mind need? What does my spirit need? You know, and if we get out of the way enough, and the answers will come. You know, today my spirit needed to be here. You know, my body wasn't as willing as I would have liked, but my spirit needed to be here more than what my body's needs were. So that's what I went with. You know, and you just kind of need to ask yourself those questions. Doing that is validating yourself in action. Whether you address your needs, whenever you address your needs, you reinforce to yourself that they are important, regardless of whatever you did or didn't do previously. So maybe, you know, out of the last 100 times, you didn't meet your needs 100 of those times. That doesn't matter. Like, go that little cycle of judging yourself on your feelings and do it today. Do it now. Do it whenever you're willing and able. And if it only happens once, that's okay. It might happen again. You know. That's kind of my talk. So, I got through it. That's so exciting. So validating yourself, you know, let's do that today. Let's do that today. Whatever it is. I mean, number 1, everyone's here. If you're here, you're here, right? Validate that. Hey, I showed up today for some spiritual nourishment. I showed up for some hugs and some support and some nice music and some candle lighting. You know, how good is that we're treating ourselves right now for the last hour? We're just really loving ourselves and taking care of ourselves, you know? And then we're going to go in there and we have some snacks so we can take care of our bodies. We have big little snacks. And and then there's going to be a little, you know, meeting of one of our groups, the prosperity committee, because that's taking care of us. That's taking care of the bigger us, right? We're being of service, and we're all taking care of this congregation now. We're all practicing. How are we going to take care of our congregation? That's a big thing that we're all doing to take care of ourselves. So I just want you all to know that you're all wonderful and a beautiful part of my spirituality and support. And, you know, I really love coming here and seeing everybody's faces. And I appreciate the opportunity to be up here and to share and to be the speaker for whatever the message is today. And I want to thank everyone who participated in putting the service together today. And so, thank you.